Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Conversations with Common Sense Media. I am Etta Collins Coleman, VP of Communications and mother of three. As most of you know, our mission at Common Sense Media is to improve the lives of kids and families by providing the trustworthy information, education, and independent voice they need to thrive. As a research and advocacy nonprofit, we explore so many things: kids' social media use, the addictive nature of apps and algorithms, and their impact on kids' well being. We've advocated for policy changes and tech industry accountability to protect kids. But there's another protective element we'll talk about today: parents. Parents and caregivers. They are our kids' most influential teachers. Kids are watching and copying our habits. Yet we're operating in the same always on world. And it's becoming increasingly distracting for us too. Our devices are competing for our attention alongside our children. How can we take stock of our own behaviors and shift our focus to the things that matter most and become better role models for our children? Joining me today to talk more about this is Dr. Zelana Montminy. Dr. Zelana is a psychologist, a behavioral scientist, author, and speaker. She spent so many years unraveling the science of resilience, focus, and human connection. She's a thought leader on designing healthier ways to navigate an increasingly distracted world. She is also a wife and mother of three. In addition, she serves on the Los Angeles Advisory Council of Common Sense Media, the Next Gen Board of the United States Olympic and Paralympic Foundation, and the Council of the Library Foundation of Los Angeles. Her new book, which I have here with my Post-its, Finding Focus, Own Your Attention in an Age of Distraction, is an empowering guide to reclaiming your most precious resource, your attention. Dr. Montminy, thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for this conversation.
So am I. I really loved your book, and you can see all my Post-its here. Yeah, I read it as a refreshing and hopeful counter narrative to all the talk about productivity, right? And your
Yes.
message is not about just better shortcuts to do more or to juggle it all more efficiently. Instead, I found it to be about sifting through the distractions and focusing on what's really important.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, listen, the book was born out of what I was seeing everywhere, which is, I mean, from us, but also from parents who deeply, deeply love their children and their partnerships, but felt like they're constantly failing at being present for the people that they care about, including themselves. So, um, it's not because they don't care. It's because this world was literally engineered to fragment our attention. And so that's really what the book is about. I realized through all the research and the work I've done with my clients is that focus is not about productivity. Actually, I think we're missing the mark when we make it about that. It's really an emotional issue. And I think we've been misled to think that focus is some sort of discipline problem or a time management issue. But I think in real life, when we're actually talking about like the day-to-day grind, we lose focus when we're overwhelmed, when we're anxious, when we're grieving something. And I don't even necessarily refer to like big grief. It can be like a small thing, like the way your partner spoke to you in the morning that rubbed you the wrong way, or your kid yelling at you, right? When we're overstimulated, emotionally exhausted. Focus is not like a muscle that you just sort of train over and over again, although it can function as such in short spurts, but it really is a state. It's a state of functioning. It's when your nervous system feels safe. It's when when you feel safe, you can actually concentrate. When it doesn't, your brain feels scattered. It's constantly scanning for threats or novelty, right? There's that dopamine fix or an escape. So it's not our failure, like our personal issue. It's a collective issue. It's an epidemic, but it's also our biology. So when you're a parent and you say, well, why can't I just be present? Like, why do I feel pulled in so many different directions? The answer is not about having more willpower or adding more to your to-do list. It's like you need more emotional support, more regulation, more permission to be human.
Absolutely. And I love that. Let's stay on the nervous system a little bit.
Yeah.
What should parents know that they probably don't, right? Like, how can parents tell the difference between the normal distraction and then something that's actually harming their child's nervous system or development?
Well, we parents often think our job is to teach behavior. But I think honestly, the real influence for our children is about shaping the nervous system. And kids don't actually learn emotional regulation by being told, like, be calm, why are you getting so upset? Like, take a breath. They actually learn it by being with someone who's regulated. And we call this co regulation, or with someone who can actually repair when they're not regulated or can talk through that process, right? So I think it's really important to remember that when I talk about distraction, it's not just cognitive, it's physiological, right? And we talked about the emotional piece of it, but a dysregulated nervous system just simply can't sustain focus. And I think that we need to remember that piece, that it really is about our nervous system feeling safe enough to be intentional about what we're attuned to, which is essentially what focus is.
Absolutely. I love that, the
Yeah.
regulation, right? So I have 3 daughters, 16, 12, and 6, and every single one of them regulates in a different manner, like, we approach it very differently. I know in your book you talk about approaching parenting in a very different manner for each child, right? So how to that extent, how has parenting changed in a time of constant alerts on our phones, comparison, urgency, with the 16, 12, and 6-year-old. I know you also have a 12-year-old, I think. You have 3, but how old are they?
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a 13-year-old boy, an 11-year-old girl, and a 5-year-old girl. So yeah, I'm like, I'm in it. And it's also fascinating to be in different stages with different children. And of course, all children are different, but the ages and stages make a big difference too. And it's wild to be, raising them in parallel. But, I think, listen, we used to raise children in villages, like with major communities together. It was like a collective thing. And now we raise them inside algorithms, inside parenting books, inside like people telling us what to do. And there's always an opinion. There's always another opinion, another standard we need to hold, another crisis, another like parenting hack, another notification. And so what ends up happening is we're always parenting under surveillance, like by social media, by the metrics, by comparisons, by being in our own head and overthinking everything. And it's exhausting. And I think the most important piece of this is to understand that, we're not necessarily failing at parenting. We're just like completely overwhelmed and overloaded. And I think that's the biggest piece of it. And that's what makes it so hard,
Absolutely.
you
It is
know?
so hard.
Yeah, I mean,
It
it's
is.
so hard. And everybody's urgency feels like our emergency, and that we have to be responsive constantly. And it's not just responding on one platform. We have probably, like, I mean, I know for me, I have probably 10 different like DM, Slack, WhatsApp, it's like email, this, that. We're not meant to live like this, and our brain just simply cannot process all the incoming.
I appreciate that so much. There's one part that I dog-eared here, page 109. It's highlighted too.
I
Um,
love it.
you talk about the best kind of break is deeply restorative, one
Mhm.
that allows us to detach emotionally.
Yes.
With all the things, all the reminders, all the alarms, all the comparisons, how do you suggest as parents that we do that? That we take that deep restorative break and kind of detach emotionally, and then in turn teach our own children and our family members how to do the same?
Listen, I think that we think that we're taking a break when we're scrolling through cat videos on YouTube. We think it's restorative, and we all laugh about it. We're like, I'm gonna go veg and numb out on the couch. And that's fine. Like, it has its place, totally. But like when we're triple screening and binge watching Netflix while sitting next to our partners, buying groceries and checking email at the exact same time, that might feel good. It might be feeding our dopamine, and it might be, whatever, it might numb us, but it's not restoring our brain, and it's certainly not restoring our nervous system capacity to regulate and to deal with all the incoming content that we're constantly processing on a day-to-day basis. So I think as parents, I think it's really important to understand that we're all in different seasons, right? Like some seasons of parenting just require more of us physically. Like we simply just cannot. It's very, very hard to step away from 4 toddlers versus, 2 teens. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you step away to be restorative either. I think it's really important that we stop mistaking, a Target run for my break or my self-care, right? Like that's not it either. And I really advocate for micro moments of restoration. And it just simplifies everything. So you don't have to think of this as like this big thing. Like, no, we don't need a 2 week silent meditative retreat away from our families. Although that sounds so lovely, right?
That's
About
great.
it sounds amazing, but it's not going to like do the things that we expect it to. Like it might work for a couple of days when we get back, and then we're back to like our old ways, right? So it's really about continuation and consistency of the small stuff. So a restorative break could simply just be looking away from your screen or looking away from whatever it is you're doing and just looking in the distance. And it tricks your brain into feeling like you're disconnecting, and it can be literally like 10 seconds, 20 seconds. So much healthier than looking down at a screen, at a different screen. I mean, it little things like you could be with all your kids and everybody's talking at once and you feel overstimulated, and you could just say, Mom needs a timeout. I'm going to step outside and take a deep breath. I'll be right back. And they're going to look at you like, what? But you're articulating what is restoration. You're doing it. They're watching you. You're showing them that nature matters, that being outside matters, that breath matters. You're not overselling it, but you also come back a little more regulated and it feels good to them, because they're going to co-regulate with that. So again, it's the simple stuff. It's like a drive in the car without music, without a podcast. How disorienting would that be, right? Like so many of us don't do that, but our brain just can't process the constant input. And so that is restorative. And that's important to model.
I love that so much. The modeling is critical here, like just to showcase this is what's
Yeah.
possible. This is what I'm doing. You should do that. I love that. Um, so we're on the West Coast. We have viewers in the West Coast, East Coast, in the South, and the Midwest. And what are some digital distraction habits that families can engage in tonight? Are there challenges that you have that you can recommend that we do to just focus?
One of the biggest myths that we all kind of subscribe to is that kids need, I mean, and by the way, they do need structure, but they don't necessarily need more structure. What they really need is for us to feel regulated, for them to regulate. And what I've learned through all of this research and work in the focus space is that focus grows in environments where kids feel emotionally seen and not managed. So if we want to raise focused kids and connected families, we need to start with the safety piece and not necessarily the screens. Screens aren't I mean, they are, responsible for a lot of issues, but they're not the main issue. They're more of a symptom or like a band-aid to the main issue. So I think, something families can do to stay more connected, even just tonight, is like have a conversation where you're not fixing, there's no solutions, you're not teaching, you're literally listening. And you can ask really open-ended questions. You can say, like, what was hard today? What made you feel small? What made you feel brave? Little things that builds more focus than any app could, and more connection. And they might honestly, more likely than not, just be like, I don't know. And then if they do, you respond with your own answer. Today was kind of a weird day, and especially on the drive home, I started thinking of grandma, and I don't know, that kind of made me feel uncomfortable. They're going to stare at you with big eyes. Now, depending on ages and stages, you can decide what you share and how much of it, but it's so important that we start with the vulnerability to show them what that means and what that looks like. Because what we also have to remember is because of the constant stream communication our kids are having, they don't really have language for connection.
Mm-hmm.
Their connection is digital mostly. And so you articulating yourself verbally to them, emotionally, sharing an experience, whether or not it's uncomfortable or whether or not there's friction, is super important and healthy for them. So that's another piece of this.
I love that. And something that I do, especially my oldest is driving, but when the three of us are in the car, even when I just have the younger two, and the three of
Littles,
us are in the
yeah.
car. Yeah, the littles. I always ask at carpool pickup, like, okay, how was your day on a scale of like 1 to 10? It's so funny. My 6-year-old is always like, it was 100. Like, great, and then
Oh, I love it.
I love that. I love her enthusiasm. And
It's sometimes, no, I love that you do that. It's sometimes hard for kids when we ask them how their day is, though, because there's like so much to process that they sometimes shut down, especially tweens. They don't even know how to respond to that, if you've noticed. And sometimes I encourage parents, and I do this myself, is like take a pause and then ask like off the wall questions like that kind of don't really have to do with school, but sort of do, like, oh, or just notice like you're smiley today. And then you just pause and hopefully they'll tell you why, right? Or, huh, I wonder who you sat with at lunch, and
Mhm.
that kind of opens a whole new conversation too. But kids can be finicky when it comes to
For
this.
sure. For
But I love
sure.
that you do that.
Yeah, we also do. We have these carpool conversations thanks to our
Mhm.
Common Sense Media digital literacy and well-being curriculum, that are like mini podcasts, if you will. That it's just audio. You can listen to them in your car, and sometimes we listen to them, and we have there are prompts, similar to what you're sharing about, like, what was so funny today, or who'd you sit next to during lunch, or
I
who's
love
the
that.
week. So it's always good to also check out our Common Sense Media digital literacy and well-being to find out about our carpool conversations and how you can have those conversations, in digitally distracted non-digital environment.
I love that. That's
Right.
such a good tip.
Let's see. We have a few more questions and then I want to get to more of my post-it noted pages in your book. Um, a couple of questions around, I love how you talked about, it's in like page 18, um, foods to increase focus and attention. I love this. I love coffee. I love coffee.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
love that you listed green tea and coffee and like the dark chocolate,
Yeah.
spices like cinnamon, rosemary, peppermint,
Mm-hmm.
and extra tips. Of course, drinking water, very critical, very important.
Mm-hmm.
But can you tell us about, how that not only impacts, parents and caregivers, but also what it is to model that for our children and why that's important?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I think the wellness culture has done a really good job of shifting our focus to all of these hacks and tips and tools that we can buy and do. And, it's like it keeps us looped in. And this is by no means like to, vilify the wellness industry. I think there's some really positive things, but I think we forget within that mess of all the things that like the most foundational things about being human is what's going to keep us healthy and well and thriving. Like you can do all the hacks in the world, you can do all the saunas and the red lights and the green juice and the coffee and the whatever, but if you're not eating consistently well generally, if you're not, spending time with friends and community, if you're not sleeping well, if you don't have good sleep hygiene, all those things matter. If you're not drinking water, I mean, dehydration is one of the core issues when we look at focus. That's one of the things that people are skipping over entirely. And yet they're, doing all the other things to try to help focus and forgot to drink water. Like all these little things matter so much. So food is a critical piece of this. And I think it goes beyond obviously what's in each individual food. Like coffee increases the dopamine and the norepinephrine, so it increases your alertness and your motivation. So that's great. And small moderate amounts is perfect for that. But I think when you make healthy choices, you're also telling yourself that you're worthy of those choices. And that
Mm.
creates a really beautiful positive feedback loop in your brain and in your nervous system that makes you feel like not only that you should be doing this, but that you're worthy of all of it. And from that it comes a lot of positivity, and benefits. So I think there's multiple things that can domino from healthier choices. And modeling it is critical. You can tell your kids all day long to stay away from fast food and to, eat colorful plate of food or whatever it is. But if you're not doing it, they're not going to think it has any value. And they're also not really going to trust you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's so true. That is so true. Um, as a mother of three, you manage so many schedules, including your own, right?
Yes.
Um, in managing our busy schedules, our own digital distractions, right, aren't is not easy. Do you think it's okay for kids to see adults struggling emotionally? And if so, what should that modeling look like? What is healthy modeling in terms of like that emotional struggle, self-regulation look like?
I think that it's not just okay. I think it's really necessary for kids to see us struggling. I think they need to see us being human. I think that, of course, there's a line in oversharing and burdening them with too much adult feelings. But I think, depending on ages and stages, articulating your experience is critical. So healthy modeling can look like, this morning we were in a rush and I snapped and it wasn't about you. And I'm really sorry. I'm going to try again. Or it could just be, and it's not in that sentence. If you noticed, I didn't explain why. I didn't say, like, I'm perimenopausal and I also didn't sleep and, whatever it was, like why I was snappy. I just named the behavior that wasn't okay. So I'm not trying to qualify it. And I think that's a really important piece of this. Kids don't need us to be perfect, they need us to be human. And they need us to articulate how to be human, because unfortunately, in this day of, in this generation of tech and digital distraction, they're not really experiencing like the physical human element of being human as much as they should, right? And so it's that much more important that we talk through it.
I love that. They don't need us to be perfect. They need us to be human. That wise words, truly, truly. Um, well, I know we're coming to the end of our time, but I just have a couple more questions and really, really appreciate this insightful discussion. I'd like to end it with some final words from you,
Sure.
more words of wisdom on parenting in today's world. And a couple of things. What do you wish every parent knew and caregiver knew, but no one is telling them? Like what do you wish for us to know? And then what gives you hope about this generation of kids?
I love those questions. You don't need to optimize your child, you just need to know your child. I think that presence and focused attention beats performance every time. I mean, the science is super clear on this, human experience is super clear on this. Um, and I think we think that, we need to spend more time with our kids, and we need to, do all the things and get them in all that activities so that their resume looks this and they get into it, all that stuff. If you're not there, if you're not actually there in those micro moments, it's not going to imprint, and it's not going to matter as much as you think, and the relationship won't be there in the way that you expect it to be. And I think that's really tragic. So again, I'm not saying, you know revolutionize your life and quit work and be with your kids all the. It's actually the opposite. Do what you
Mhm.
need to do, like live your life. Show them how to live a beautiful life that's full and big, and that doesn't depend on them for you to be happy and to find meaning. But when you are with them, even if it's like literally 15 minutes a day, like if you're passing shifts in the night and you have older kids and they have activities and you have activity, whatever, be in those moments. Like show them that, you know what, I'm going to put my phone down right now. I'm going to look away from my computer and I'm going to hang out. Like I'm just going to be with you right now, even if it's 5 minutes. And even little kids love that. It sort of fills their emotional bank account. Just articulating your presence is really, really important. And look up from the screen. They're watching everything. I think what gives me a lot of hope is that this generation is very emotionally perceptive. They do care about meaning. They ask questions, they're curious, and they don't just want to succeed anymore. Like they don't, I think the definition of success has really changed. They want to matter. They want to
Mhm.
matter to us, and they want to matter in this world. And I think that's really powerful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Zelana Montminy. Finding Focus. This has been such a pleasure. Thank you for the conversation. Everyone, check out her book today. Thank you for all you do for our Common Sense Media community, for serving on our LA Advisory Council, and for this wonderful book for parents and caregivers.
Thank you so
Thanks so much.
much.
Thanks
Thank you
for
for
joining us,
having
everyone.
me.